Radhe Radhe, a spiritual good morning to one and all in this continuing series of our Bhagavad Gita Study, Chapter 6 classes and recap videos. Mummy and I are here to present the content briefly that we covered in today's class.
Radhe Radhe.
As always, we started off with a few quiz questions to remind us about what was covered in the previous session, that was 2 weeks ago. So we encourage you to take a look at the slides and go through those questions at your convenience. And then we covered chapter 6, verses 22 and 23. First up, chapter 6, verse 22.
So, chapter 6, verse 22, Gagan has given it the catchphrase Richter scaled. He will explain it. I'll go ahead with the chanting. Yam labdva cha param labham manyate nadhikam tataha yasmin sthito na dukkhena gurunapi vichalyate.
So chapter 6, verse 22, as Mummy mentioned, the catchphrase is Richter scaled. We've put that in the context of earthquakes and not being shaken by them when we are in that steadfast practice as a yogi. So way beyond and transcending and crossing the limits of the Richter scale. We have scaled it. That is the goal, and that is the ability one has when one attains this greater state, which is, from last time we learned, samadhi, that joyous state of yoga, from which then there is steadfastness and no deviating from the eternal truth. So here in chapter 6, verse 22, Sri Krishna tells us that when you gain that state, then there's nothing greater to be attained. It is, as we said, the absolute or the global maximum. And you're not going to be shaken by any of the greatest calamities. Swamiji's commentary gives us two different examples, one from a very practical standpoint that we see day to day, millionaires, multimillionaires, billionaires, and so on. The rat race continues. Happiness is not in that monetary, financial, or material direction. Therefore, we get reminded that as souls and tiny fragments of God, we are really yearning for the love and happiness that God has, the infinite bliss and the eternal happiness that God provides. So that is where we need to be channeling our energy and our direction. The other example he gives, of course, is of God-realized saints. He mentions Prahlad in particular. We mentioned Swamiji, in our opinion, in the class today, how one is just not disturbed with whatever is going on around. It is that steadfastness and that equanimity that truly exemplifies the love and the devotion towards God. So even in a material body, a God-realized saint is serving a purpose to help us get more knowledge about God's supreme wisdom, and the greatest calamity, as Sri Krishna says, cannot shake such a person. So that is chapter 6, verse 22. We then covered chapter 6, verse 23.
Gagan has given it the catchphrase, yes, yoga equals severance. Very interesting. Let's go ahead with the chanting. Tam vidyada dukh sanyog viyogam yoga sangnitam sanishchayena yoktavyo yogo nirvinna chetasa.
So chapter 6, verse 23, as Mummy said, this is yes, Y-E-S, the opposite of no. Yog equals severance. Again, a reminder that Y-E-S, that's the acronym for these three words here. And I think we really talked at length about the perhaps contrast or the irony of that. Till now, we have often mostly just heard of yoga as union with God. And now we're saying, or in fact, Sri Krishna says, that it is a state of severance. Seems ironic or contrasting, but in fact, it is severance, coincidentally from a union. But that union now, we're talking about union with misery. So we in this material-based world, all surrounded by Maya, which is a servitor and a material energy of God, we are attracted to all things that cause misery. So union with misery is our current state. What we need is the opposite. So we need to disconnect from that state. We need to sever the ties we have with that union with misery. Therefore, that severance is going to create or result in union with God. That is yoga. So here we see a definition by Sri Krishna himself in chapter 6, verse 23, halfway through chapter 6, that state of severance from union with misery is known as yoga. As we saw in class and in the commentary, there are two aspects building up from the prior verse, chapter 6, verse 22. So there is the attainment of the greatest bliss, and then now we see that there is freedom from pessimism. Later on, we see in Swamiji's commentary that we shall learn in future verses how to practice meditation, this entire essence of chapter 6, and therefore how to resolutely practice it with determination. In the commentary itself here, Swamiji describes the analogy coming from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, darkness and light, Maya and God. Darkness can never engulf light. Likewise, Maya can never overpower or overcome God. But again, we've seen this a few times. To actually get God realized, we need the grace of God. Maya itself, we are trying to get away from it. We want to sever ties with it. But that's going to come not just with efforts and devotion, but finally with that grace of God. So helpful examples here. And again, a summary that the state of yoga implies two aspects. Prior verse, the attainment of bliss. Current verse, freedom from misery.
Yes, very well said, Gagan. That is the state of yoga, slowly, with practicing different spiritual practices. We can try and move towards that state of yoga, where we experience the real divine bliss with our mind totally steadfast in God, and we are away from the suffering and misery of this world. Now, I would like you to take note of two Sanskrit words. From verse 22, let's look at Vichalayate. Vichalayate means is shaken. And then another word from verse 23 is Anirvin Chetasa. That means with an undeviating mind. So they are both like in contrast. Is shaken, Vichalyate means once you are in that state of yoga, then your mind is not shaken. Okay, then you are steadfast. You are in connection with full attachment with God, and you are experiencing that divine bliss. And when we look at Nirvana Chetasa, that means with undeviating mind. That also means the same thing, that you are not getting distracted by the worldly pleasures or distractions. Your mind is concentrated and it is steadfast in God. So this is how you attain the state of yoga, when you are steadfast in God and your mind is attached, and that is how you can have severance from union with misery. Usually in this world, we have all the time union with misery. We have to train our mind to, through meditation and through spiritual practices, to stay in control, whereby we attain the union with God. That is the state of yoga, where we experience attainment of bliss. I hope that helps to explain.
And I'm going to add an English word for everybody to take away today as well. So that's going to be tribulation, often heard in terms of the phrase trials and tribulations. So here again, I think a very apt choice, talking about saints going through illness, ailment, and other issues as well. Those are tribulations, oppression, affliction, times of trouble. But of course, being well above all that, continuing to be steadfast. So a reminder to us that there is, as Mummy said, there's misery, there are tribulations. We seek the opposite. We want to sever ourselves from those tribulations and gain that bliss, the supreme bliss that we all are desiring. With that, we come to the end of our recap video for today, but a very special day. So extending Tulsi Vivah wishes to one and all. We hope everybody has been able to take part in some of the festivities, both yesterday and coming up later today. But again, a very, very divine, special, magical day, and lots of best wishes spiritually to one and all.
Yeah, very well said, Gagan. Very best wishes for Tulsi Viva today. We are going to have a beautiful display of those all those pastimes and recreation by the loving devotion of our devotees here at Radha Krishna Temple with the full wedding ceremony of Tulsi Devi with Shaligram, form of Sri Krishna. So hope many of you joined us yesterday for Haldi Sangeet ceremony, and many of you will be joining us today through the live portal. And let's all rejoice in that happiness and attach our mind to God with loads of devotion. Thank you and Radhe Radhe.
And one final message is that next time when we meet, so November 12th, 2022, Saturdays as always, it's going to be a different time for those joining us from India and most other countries except in North America because of the time change taking place later tonight. So currently, if you're joining us at 6:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time on Saturdays, from Saturday, November 12th, 2022, that is going to be 7:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. And this will be the case probably for the next 4 to 5 months till our clocks again change. Daylight saving time ends this weekend for us in North America, therefore the time change. We'll send reminders as always. Till then, again, best wishes. Thank you so much, and Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.